In this essay, I want to tackle a perhaps sensitive topic of how and why actors, creators, and producers on Game of Thrones should or should not be held accountable. And I want to sort of disagree a little bit with Dragon Demands. Dragon Demands has done a lot of good work sort of detailing a lot of the ugliness behind the scenes of not just season 8, but other seasons with Benioff and Weiss. And he argues that essentially they haven't really paid much of a price afterwards. Yes, they lost the Star Wars trilogy, but they didn't lose all that much in the grand scheme of things. I want to push back slightly and look at the work of Sophie Turner. I myself have never been a big Sophie Turner fan. I like Sansa just fine. I think the character is good, but I'm a little bit mixed as to why people like Sophie so much. And I think in her case, although it's perhaps not as much, she has clearly actually suffered quite a bit since season 8. And obviously, the place to go to would be Dark Phoenix, which totally failed at the box office. But I want to concentrate a little bit on Quibi. I'll do something more at length because Quibi's demise is very fascinating unto itself. So, very quickly, Quibi was an idea by Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Katzenberg ran Disney for almost a decade and was responsible for some of their more major hits. And Spielberg, he later created DreamWorks. That eventually failed as well. But more recently, he has worked on this project called Quibi. The idea was pretty short and simple, that instead of long-form content people would want to look at and perhaps even pay for, short-term content, hence Quibi, quick bites. And again, I want to be fair and even-minded. I have not seen what Sophie was in, which is apparently some kind of horror gothic thing. But, because again, the way Quibi works, and it's very big of a paradox, even if you don't pay for it or subscribe to it, just by showing interest, you would have showed that it had some viability. So I just did not want to even look at it for review purposes because that would actually help her. So again, that's just my own ethics about it. I will eventually do something where I review it in depth because apparently now it's gone, so it's not going to matter at this point. But in any case, her actual thing with Quibi, which was very well paid for, was actually considered one of the more better ideas. I mean, Quibi itself is really bizarre. It just seemed to have a really scattershot set of ideas, right? You had just celebrities just doing stuff for no reason. For instance, Anna Kendrick, for whatever reason, has a show with a sex doll and things like that. But some ideas actually did make sense. For instance, there's one with Chance the Rapper, and that sounded really interesting. I would really like to see something on that. But for the most part, the ideas were pretty much all over the place. And Sophie was no exception. So when we combine sort of the failure of Dark Phoenix as well as the failure of Quibi, I do think in her case she has not benefited greatly from the end of Game of Thrones. Now perhaps she should have more lack of success. That's possible, but I don't think she's actually greatly gotten much bounce from the end of season 8. Now, again, I'm the first one to say we shouldn't necessarily celebrate somebody's lack of success, and I don't even mind if cast members defend the show, but I think her defense in particular was really, really terrible and not really well thought out. It was barely an argument. It was very much a kind of entitlement argument that she was just entitled to, the fans should have just liked season 8 just because it was there and that's it. There's no real attempt to even argue it was a good season. It's good because they made it, they worked hard on it. And I don't think that's much of an argument at all. Believe me, I know people who work genuinely hard jobs from 10 hours to 12 hours. They put in way more work than I think they did in season 8. So a little bit of a disagreement with Dragon Demands on, people who have or have not suffered after season 8. And it's a very interesting story because, again, the whole strategy of Quibi was to just hire these celebrities and give them a huge amount of money. And essentially that seemed to be what they did with Sophie. They just hired her name and hoped her brand recognition would somehow help Quibi. And it did not. Apparently just hiring Sansa just because she has the name Sansa is not enough for you. Alright, there's will be a lot more to do in terms of autopsy, in terms of people's careers. But I think Sophie's troubles with Quibi, I think, are worth reflecting on, at least for a certain amount of time. Alright, this has been GRRM and Thrones Analyzed on the consequences of Season 8 Game of Thrones. Thank you for listening. If you can, please drop a comment below. Please drop a like. Thanks again.